20 British crafts every household in the 1970s knew that have completely disappeared. No kit, no tutorial, no instruction manual beyond the woman sitting next to you. In the 1970s, British households practiced crafts that had been passed hand to hand for generations, skills that turned waste into warmth, scraps into beauty, and an evening into something that lasted decades. Number 20. How to make a macrame wall hanging from garden twine. In the 1970s, macrame decorated nearly every British living room. Garden twine, a wooden dowel, and an afternoon produced something that hung on the wall for 20 years. The craft required nothing more than a series of knots, each one learned from the woman who had learned it from her mother. The wall it decorated is still there. The knowledge of what to hang on it is not. Number 19. How to hook a rag rug from worn-out clothing. Every household kept a pile of worn fabric that had nothing left to be. Cut into strips and looped through a Hessian backing with a hook, it became a rug that kept a kitchen floor warm for a generation. Rag rugging used what other crafts could not: the coats, the skirts, the curtains that had finished being what they were. Nothing in the house died. It only changed what it was. Number 18. How to knit a Fair Isle pattern from memory. British women carried Fair Isle patterns in their heads. No chart, no printed guide. The sequence of colors moved from hand to hand the same way a song moves, learned by repetition until it was simply known. The craft required winter evenings, patience, and the willingness to unpick 5 rows and start again without frustration. The jumper it produced outlasted the woman who made it. The pattern did not always survive her. Number 17. How to smock a child's dress by hand. Smocking, the gathering of fabric into tiny, evenly spaced pleats, embroidered into patterns, produced children's clothing of a quality no high street garment has since matched. It required a needle, thread, and the ability to gather fabric evenly before a single stitch of embroidery was placed. The dress lasted through 3 children. The skill that made it lasted 1 generation. Number 16. How to make tatted lace with a single shuttle. Tatting produced fine lace from a single thread wound around a small shuttle, and it trimmed collars, handkerchiefs, and the edges of pillowcases across Britain for centuries. By the 1970s, it was already fading. The shuttles still existed. The women who could fill them were becoming fewer every year. A piece of tatted lace took a week to make and lasted 100 years. That ratio no longer makes sense to anyone who has not tried it. Number 15. How to make a corn dolly from the last sheaf of harvest. Corn dollies, figures woven from the last stalks of wheat, were made in farmhouses and village halls across Britain well into the 1970s. Each region had its own pattern: the Suffolk horseshoe, the Staffordshire knot, the Welsh border fan. The differences were not decorative. They were identity. The harvest still comes in every year. The hands that knew what to do with the last sheaf are nearly gone. Number 14. How to make candles from paraffin wax and a kitchen mold. Home candle making was a common craft in the 1970s. Paraffin wax was melted in a tin, poured around a wick into any mold the kitchen could provide, set in cold water and left overnight. The result was functional, personal, and cost almost nothing beyond the wax. The power cuts of the 1970s in Britain made the candle maker the most useful person on the street. That reputation faded with the lights coming back on. Number 13. How to decoupage a piece of furniture using magazine cuttings. Decoupage, layering paper images onto a surface and sealing them with varnish, turned a battered chest of drawers into something deliberately decorated rather than accidentally worn. A housewife in the 1970s, with a pile of magazines, a tin of varnish, and a Sunday afternoon, could transform furniture that had nothing left to give into something that had. The furniture survived. The craft that renewed it did not. Number 12. How to press flowers and make something permanent from them. A heavy book, a sheet of blotting paper, a flower picked at its best, left for 3 weeks, produced something flat and permanent, capable of being arranged into pictures, cards, and framed pieces. The craft required only attention: which flower to pick, when to pick it, how long to leave it. The garden produces the same flowers it always has. The knowledge of what to do with them before they fade has nearly gone. Number 11. How to make a patchwork quilt from fabric scraps. Every scrap of fabric that had outlived its purpose went into the patchwork bag. Dress fabric, curtain offcuts, worn shirt sleeves, cut into hexagons, stitched together over months of evenings. They became a quilt that kept a family warm for decades. No two quilts were the same. Each one was a record of what the household had worn and used. The fabric is still there. The bag that collected it is not. Number 10. How to tool a leather belt and make it last a lifetime. Leatherwork, dampening tooling patterns into the surface and finishing with wax, produced belts, bags, and bookmarks that aged well and lasted decades. It was taught in school craft lessons, in evening classes, and by fathers to sons on a Sunday in the garage. The leather is still the same leather. The tool that shaped it is in a drawer somewhere, waiting for someone who knows what it is for. Number 9. How to cut a lino block and print from it by hand. A square of lino, a set of cutting tools, a brayer, and a tin of ink produced prints that could be reproduced 100 times or used once on a Christmas card. Lino printing was taught in every British secondary school art room through the 1970s. The results hung on walls and went home in envelopes. The lino is cheap. The knowledge of how to cut it without cutting toward the hand has disappeared from most schools entirely. Number 8. How to arrange dried flowers so they kept their color for years. Dried flower arranging required picking at exactly the right moment before full bloom on a dry day and hanging in the right conditions: warm, dark, moving air. Done correctly, the arrangement kept for years. Done at the wrong moment, it faded within weeks. The 1970s British sitting room had dried flowers on the mantelpiece. The house today has artificial ones. The difference is that one of them was once alive. Number 7. How to weave a basket from rushes collected at the waterside. Rush basketry, collecting green rushes, soaking to restore flexibility and weaving over a mold, was practiced in village craft evenings across Britain through the 1970s. The rushes still grow at every waterside in England. The molds still exist in craft suppliers' catalogues, but the hands that knew the tension needed to hold a weave without splitting the rush are nearly gone. Number 6. How to do crewel work embroidery and fill a panel over a winter. Crewel work, embroidery using wool thread on linen, produced wall panels, cushion covers, and fire screens of extraordinary density and color. It was slow. A panel the size of a cushion took a winter of evenings. That was not considered a problem. The woman who worked it in 1974 left something that will outlast her grandchildren. The craft that produced it will not outlast this generation unless someone chooses to learn it. Number 5. How to recover an armchair using nothing but time and a staple gun. British householders recovered their own armchairs in the 1970s. New fabric, a staple gun, a pair of pliers, and a careful eye for how the old cover had been fitted were enough. No upholsterer, no instruction manual, just the evidence of how the thing had been done before and the patience to do it again. The chair is still in use. No one who owns it now knows how to recover it. Number 4. How to make papier-mâché and use it to build almost anything. Torn newspaper, wallpaper paste, a mold made from anything with a shape worth keeping. Papier-mâché built bowls, masks, puppet heads and lampshades in British households in the 1970s. It dried hard, took paint well, and cost almost nothing. It was not considered art. It was considered ordinary. Ordinary is what has been lost. Number 3. How to do marquetry and make a piece of furniture beautiful. Marquetry, cutting and laying thin veneers of different colored wood into a flat surface to form pictures or patterns, decorated boxes, trays, and tabletops, In the 1970s home workshops, it required a craft knife, a cutting mat, patience, and the eye to understand how grain direction affected the finished piece. The wood is still available. The patience required to cut it correctly is the thing now in short supply. Number 2, how to spin wool from fleece and produce something worth knitting. A drop spindle, a handful of raw fleece, an afternoon of practice began the process that turned an animal's coat into thread fine enough to knit. British women spun at home within living memory. The fleece came from local farms. The thread went directly onto the needles. The sheep still produces the same fleece it always has. The distance between the animal and the jumper is now so great that most people cannot imagine crossing it. Number 1, how to make something instead of buying it. The one habit every shortcut forgot to replace. Every craft on this list required the same thing. Not a kit, not a tutorial, not permission, just time and the belief that what your hands could make was worth more than what a shop could sell you. That belief did not disappear in a single decade. It faded one convenience at a time, until the generation that held it was gone, and the generation that followed had never needed it. The crafts on this list do not require rare materials or expensive tools. They require an evening, a willingness to learn, and someone who still remembers. Find that person before they are gone too.